All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us back from another Modern Agent Blueprint. Today we have the one and only Jimmy Nelson, and he is going to be talking about all kinds of stuff podcast wise. How long have you been doing this podcast, Jimmy?
I've been doing the podcast for 4.5, 5 years. So we're almost on year 5 that I've been doing a podcast now.
So you were kind of like the OG of podcasters in the real estate industry.
I'm kind of the OG with everything, right? Because I'm old. That just comes with the territory.
I love it. Well, we are super excited to have you on here. You are a ball of energy. I always like when we get to see each other, and I am so excited to have you on. So thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. And yeah, I try to it's energy just comes out. So it's like that's why real estate works, because of ADD and all the other stuff that I have going on in my brain that just starts bouncing around like a ping pong ball. But yeah, that's why real estate works. I always say that. So I've been doing the podcast for living in the podcast world for almost 5 years now, and have learned a lot along the way. And again, if I can help in any way to maneuver you around the speed bumps that happen with starting a podcast, that is what I'm here for. So that's one of the things we're talking about today. Now, I know Brooke, I think, is putting a link into the chat that will have the flyer that I had printed out for today. So I'll be talking about equipment, how you get started, what to do, and everything kind of from A to Z, right? And there's different ways to go about this and to start this. And there's links in that thing that Brooke is sharing. There's links in there. We'll add it down below too, so you'll have it. But
also add it real quick. We'll add it to the YouTube channel too. So then if anybody needs it, it's all going to be there. So don't worry. If you're watching this later, you're going to have it.
Perfect. I love it. And today I'm in my room where I do my podcast. I'm in the room where I do my show every week. And so we'll talk about consistency, those kind of things. But yeah, it's really getting through the speed bumps of some things when you first start, and coming up with some ideas and what should I be doing, how should I be doing it, and those kind of things. So I'm going to be covering a lot of that today. But to get started, right? It's the idea of developing a clear concept of what actually do I want this podcast to be like? What do I want it to sound like? What do I want it to do? And defining your target audience, what your purpose is, and those kind of things. So mine specifically, so the Elite Real Estate podcast that I do really was originally started out, we started out as Free for All Friday, then it's now transitioned into the Elite Real Estate podcast. And so again, along the line, there's changes in business and whatever else, but tailor your content to meet your interests and needs. So what I say is this all the time. So we were going after real estate agents specifically to start. And what it kind of transitioned into is we became more of now the Elite Real Estate podcast. I have this Friday live at 7:30. I have my doctor coming on, right? So to talk about entrepreneurship, think about it. Doctors don't do much different than we do. They're out trying to get clients. They provide a service. They ask a lot of questions like we should be doing. So I have a doctor coming on, and I've had a dentist on. I've had mortgage people and title and all kinds of different businesses. But then it becomes more of a mindset. So the Elite Real Estate podcast now has transitioned kind of into an entrepreneurial mindset, and then how do we do business on a daily basis, right? Now, I will tell you, when I first got started doing it, we really kind of just winged it. We didn't really know what we were doing. I just started talking to people, and we were just doing interviews and all those kind of things. And one of the things that we found too, and I found a lot of success with the Elite Real Estate podcast, is that when I do the show, I like it to be really organic and just conversational and letting things happen. It's always about the guest. And in fact, it's been so much about the guest that now that I've been asked to go on other podcasts, I have to mentally switch my brain to not start interviewing somebody right away. So I have this tendency to start interviewing people right away. And so I have to switch my brain. So again, coming up with a clear concept of what you want to do, right? What does it look like? How does it sound, feel, taste? Why would somebody want to do it? And again, it's very similar to social media. I'm trying to attract similar like-minded people like me. I'm trying to attract those same people to listen to the podcast, right? So it's coming up with that clear concept and trying to define what you're trying to do and what your target audience is. And then secondly, investing in some quality equipment. Now, most of us are already invested. That's something you could start with right away is your phone. Like most of us have this phone, right? That's a big piece of equipment. It's expensive and it's pretty darn good. Now, I've got a microphone, I've got earpieces in, some stuff that's been added to it. But when we first started, and I first started doing the podcast, we had a basic microphone, super simple, and a phone and a computer. And we just started podcasting. We started with a live stream, right? So that is again part of the podcast. So there's two things that I do. So it's the podcast. Yes, that's a recording that goes out once a week. It's on Apple iTunes and all the Spotify and all the places you can find podcasts. But also to go along with it is the live stream. Okay. So again, you have a camera, you have a phone, you can live stream, put it on YouTube while you're doing the podcast. I always suggest that because now you're getting out to even more people. You're producing content and you're getting out to more people. And not only that, then you take that hour long or 30-minute long, however long you're doing the interview with, chop that up into condensed pieces. Now you have a bunch of reels and more content social media wise for you. But in that flyer, in that handout that you have, there's links in there. And I put in 3 different categories of how to start your podcast, right? So for me, I have a pretty expensive equipment, pretty expensive microphones, pretty expensive podcasting board, pretty expensive, all the different things that I have in here are pretty expensive, but I built up to that. I didn't jump right into that because again, if you jump right into it, it's expensive up front, right? So like the podcaster board that I use, it's like a $900 board just for the board. Now it does a lot of cool things because I can play some music through it, right? I can play some music through it, different things, different sound effects. Right? I could do different sound effects. Everybody loves who doesn't love the air horn, right? So my podcaster board's about $900. The microphones themselves are about $200 a piece. Headphones are, again, you can spend whatever you want on headphones, but you can really go to Amazon and get $20 earpieces like I have in today. But the more important thing is the sound that goes out. So microphones and your boards are probably the 2 most important things to invest in up front. Now the Rode mics are fantastic. I have the standalone mics, plus I have these cordless ones that you see so many people use with, shooting videos on their phone or whatever else. But then I can use these also with my board, and so they serve a dual purpose for me. So again, but the more important thing is the microphone and your boards. And the boards, look, you don't have to spend $800 on a board. Some of the boards they have out there are portable, and they're about $150, and that's probably a pretty basic, simple board to use because it's a condenser. So I don't know a lot about the technical sides of it, right? I just know what works. And the condensers and the microphones are what's going to work. There's also microphones that are directional and multi-directional, omnidirectional, right? So those you'll see when podcasters are doing, you'll see Joe Rogan. If you watch Joe Rogan show, if you watch the Elite Real Estate podcast, mine, the microphone's very close to my mouth. And we call that eating the mic. And we do that because it's a directional microphone, because there can be other sounds going around me and you can't hear it. But you also have to learn how to use those, because what happens when you start talking is you start talking and then you can't hear me, and you can hear me when I come back. And then when I come back, right? So you get that fade in and fade out. So when you have guests on, this is a pro tip for you. You have guests on and they're using a directional mic. Most of the time, they don't know how to use it. So you got to keep reminding them. All right. So again, investing in some quality equipment, right? Make sure you're doing professional audio that you're getting out there. And then you see in this picture here too, I also have headphone mics like you see on a sportscaster, right? So those are fantastic to use for your guests that don't know how to use a microphone, because no matter where they turn their head, that microphone stays in front of them, right? So those are fantastic to use too if you have guests on. And for those of you that know Kurt Shewell, we put those on him all the time because he constantly is moving and talking. So anytime he's on my show, he gets those because he can't stop. He can't sit still and just use a microphone. So that's Kurt. But so again, investing in some quality equipment. Now, it doesn't mean you have to go out and spend, $2,000, a couple $100, go from there. And everybody asks me about lighting and all the other things. Like over here is a $60 ring light. Back here are some $20 color lights. Amazon's a fantastic place. I recently switched over to the earpieces instead of the overhead ones, just because these are multifunctional for me as well. So if I do a webinar or if I'm doing a Zoom like this, I can still listen to what's going on through my headphones, and nobody can see my headphones, right? I don't have to walk around but I have these earpieces that I can just walk around and move in. Same thing with these cordless mics. I can do the same thing with this. You still get a better sound from me than you would. There's no echoey. It's less echoey than it would be with the mic. Now, if I had the directional mic, it'd be even less echoey than it is. So a lot of things kind of go into that. But again, your equipment's important. In that handout you've got, if you download that handout or the one that's below, there's links in there that will take you to those products. Now, the company that I use for all my stuff is Sweetwater. Sweetwater is a company out of Indiana. It's a fabulous company that I bought all of my equipment from. And Sweetwater's customer service is fantastic. They'll also do walkthroughs with you. So if you order anything from them, they'll actually just do walkthroughs with you and give you advice on how to use it. What should I be using it with? I had to ask about these cordless mics. Could they work with the board? All these questions, and they're always there to answer. So again, Sweetwater is the company that I use. Those links that are in that form will take you directly to Sweetwater's site, but it'll take you directly to those products that they have too. So it's a great company. They're easy to work with. Typically shipping, they get it to you overnight or in a couple of days, and go from there. So that place has been amazing. And again, if you call them, they'll give you a consultation based on like, hey, this is what I want to do. This is the podcast I want to start. This is how I want to start it. Which things should I use? And they'll even talk you out of like what things you should be using. Again, to start it up, I wouldn't say go spend $2,000-$4,000. I wouldn't say spend that much. I would say spend a couple $100, get a good microphone and a good condenser board, and then just start your podcast, right? Just start. I'm always a big believer in just doing it and just getting it started. So the equipment needs to be there. The next piece is plan your content and your format. But don't overthink it, right? People like to see conversations. People like to have conversations and talk. You have to get really comfortable being in front of a camera. And if you're not used to the camera right away, you can still obviously podcast. The podcast doesn't have to have a camera involved. But again, it's more conversational. Think about it from your standpoint. What kind of podcasts do you listen to? What are you drawn to? And then just build off of what that is. So again, planning out your content, but decide the structure of your episodes. And deciding the structure of your episodes also goes along with how long do I want each one of them to be, right? How long can I be engaging? The Elite Real Estate Podcast, my podcast, is an hour long. Every episode's an hour long. You'll be surprised when you get a guest on and somebody you're interviewing, how quickly that hour goes. I mean, it goes by in a flash. Most people are like, what do I do for an hour? Well, if you're just having a conversation and people love to talk about themselves, the interviews are super easy because all I'm doing is asking them about them, their business, how long did it take to get started, what have they been doing, what it takes to be successful, how have they been doing it, and you'll be surprised at how quick and how fast an hour goes along. So just make it conversational and make it easy and the ease of use to get to that thing. So, but again, go back to like what you're going to structure your episode. Will they be interviews? Do you want to have interviews? Majority of mine are interviews. I've done a couple solos. What I will tell you about a solo, if you're going to do an hour, you have to be bulleted of what you're going to talk about, how long you're going to talk about each thing, and how it's going to move and progress. Because again, an hour by yourself is more difficult than an hour in an interview. Okay? So if you're going to do an interview style, it's going to be an hour, can go by really fast. But again, for those of you that know the Joe Rogan podcast, Joe Rogan's is 4 hours. Okay? Now, if those of you have seen like Justin Ford's podcast, I know what some podcasters do is they'll take one day a month and do 4 episodes, right? Take 4 or 5 hours, do 4 or 5 episodes, and then chunk them up and break them off later. Mine, I do it once a week, every Friday at 7:30 a.m. It's live streamed. It's on KGCI radio now. and it's live streamed on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Twitch, YouTube. So it goes out to 6 different, I've got to go into 6 different places and then multiple pages inside of those platforms. So it goes out a whole bunch of places at 7:30 every Friday morning. Now, the consistency piece is another big factor when you start thinking about doing a podcast. And I'm going to touch on that in a second. But but to plan out your content, your format, what are the discussions going to be? Are you going to do panels? You can do panels. I've had multiple guests on. But again, then you have to be conscious of, back to your equipment, the microphones. Because if you have 2 microphones, you're going to have to pass those yourself to other people. You're going to have to move microphones around, which is okay. But just realize you're going to have to use those microphones and hand them around unless you have multiple microphones. So just something else to think about as you start expanding into this podcast world of how do I start this? Well, I would say 2 mics minimum to start, because then even if you had multiple guests on, they could share 1 mic and you would have the other. So again, thinking about how you want to structure this, what your content's going to look like, how do I want this to run, and how it's going to operate, and what that's going to be is that, and how are you going to keep them engaged? The 4th thing is a hosting platform. Now, this is one of the things I didn't realize at the beginning of when I started podcasting. I didn't realize this at the beginning. I didn't realize this part. So, because we think, I'm going to do a podcast. Great, awesome. And now where does it go? And I want it to go to Apple, and I want it to go to Spotify, and I want it to be on iHeartRadio, and I want it to be on YouTube, because YouTube has a podcast platform as well. But I want it to get to all that. So, but here's the problem. Just like our websites, right? Now, for those of you that have your own professional websites, you know that it has to be hosted by someone. Someone has to host the website. Same thing with your podcast. Something has to host it where it has to live and breathe, okay? Now, the one that's the best for me, and the one that the tons of podcasters use, is Buzzsprout, okay? Buzzsprout, B-U-Z-Z, Sprout. That's the logo right there. That's the best one out there. Buzzsprout is fantastic. So when my show gets done, I upload it directly into Buzzsprout, and it lives inside of Buzzsprout, every one of my episodes. And as I'm loading them in there, am I on season 1? Am I on season 2? What episode am I on? Well, it tells me which you last uploaded. It was season 2, episode 12. Great. So it's now at season 2, episode 13. I know it just kind of automatically does that. It uploads my artwork. So I have a formal page, right? So it gives me a website that hosts that as well. So again, Buzzsprout is the best spot to host it. Now, Buzzsprout's $18 a month to host your podcast. Now, it'll host as many episodes and as many things as you want. And the reason you might ask, well, why do I have to pay the $18 a month? Why do I need to put it on Buzzsprout? The reason why is this, because then Buzzsprout pushes it out to the YouTube, to iHeartRadio, to Spotify, to Apple. There's about 6 other places that it pushes it out to. So when you see somebody that has a podcast on Apple Podcasts, it's hosted somewhere else. It just gets pushed out to Apple. All right. So, and guys, if you have questions, write them down, and I'll answer everything at the end. So I run fast, but that's where my brain works. But so write questions down. But yeah, so Buzzsprout, where it has to be hosted, and then as you pay your $18 a month to Buzzsprout, Buzzsprout's pushing everyone out to all these other platforms. So when you go to share your website or share your podcast, and someone says, I want to go to download your podcast, well, you can go find the Elite Real Estate Podcast on all these places now, because it's hosted on Buzzsprout, and Buzzsprout pushes it out to all these places. Okay? So that's where it comes important. All your audio files in there, then you can go in there, you can refine it, you can do a bunch of, there's AI in there, right? So all those things, but it has to be hosted somewhere before it can push out. That was one thing I had no idea about before I got into this world of podcasting, because I just thought, oh, great, I'll just put it on Apple. Well, you can't just put it directly on Apple. It has to go there. It has to live somewhere and breathe somewhere before it gets pushed out to all these other places. So that's a key thing that I missed and had no idea about before I did this. So choosing the right hosting platform, to me, Buzzsprout is the best. It's ease of use. It's simple. It stores all my episodes and pushes them all out to 10 different platforms. Some of the platforms I don't even know. But I did get an email the other day. This is what's crazy about this. I got an email the other day that my podcast, the Elite Real Estate Podcast, is trending in Kazakhstan. Don't know how, but it's trending in Kazakhstan. Wherever Kazakhstan is, I had to look it up. But so choosing the right hosting platform, something I didn't know about, that's a big thing, right? And then the fifth piece is you have to promote it and engage with your audience. Get it out to as many places as you can. Always be promoting it. And look, always be promoting it. You should always be promoting it. Always make sure that you're promoting your podcast to as many people as you can get it out to, right? Get it out to as many people as you get it out to, right? And again, leverage your social media, because again, social media is free. So leverage your social media. Make sure you're doing that. Then make some t-shirts, hand them out to people, right? But no, seriously, Twitch is another big one that a lot of people don't know about. Twitch, I found out about Twitch because of my kids. Twitch is where a lot of the video gamers go, okay? Twitch is very similar to YouTube, but it's for live streaming. And again, you get people that drop in from other countries. I've had people from Poland watch the show. I've had people from other countries hop in and say good morning or whatever. And again, at 7:30 in the morning, I have no idea what time it is in Poland. It's 7:30 in the morning here. But promote it, right? Ask them to leave reviews. Ask them to go to your YouTube channel and like, subscribe, share, ring the bell, right? All the things you hear all these people say, that's what's going to carry it and get it in front of more people. So our ultimate goal, again, with this is whether you're trying to get more real estate deals, whether you're trying to attract agents, right? Whether you're just trying to get some more attention and get some listings, or if you're going after clients or if you're going after agents, whatever it is, however you're using this platform, make sure you're getting all the attention on it, right? I just had a joke the other day about TikTok. So for those of you that know, I have a 13-year-old son. And I picked him up from his basketball practice the other day. And on the way home, he's like, Dad, it's kind of weird. My friends watch your TikToks. And I'm like, why is that weird? Like, kind of cool, right? He goes, well, not really. My friends are watching your TikToks. I'm like, do their parents want to buy a house? Right? So he's like, well, no. But I go, well, just remember. I go, it just seems weird. I go, but you just have a really cool dad. Like, you just have a really cool dad. That's the plot. That's the plus out of this whole thing, is your dad's really cool. Your dad's got a TikTok channel. But yeah, so your YouTube stuff, and like I said, YouTube also has a podcast platform that not only does my live stream go to YouTube, then my podcast lives on YouTube too. LinkedIn is another big one, professional-wise, right? Like, that's huge. Instagram, obviously, Facebook. Those are the simple ones. But don't forget about these. These are your Twitch, your LinkedIn, and your podcast platform on YouTube are big places to be able to put your podcast. So again, attention is the asset. If you guys ever watch anything on Gary Vee, attention is the asset. The more attention you get on anything, the better it is. But one thing this is where I said this before, and I want to circle it back because I said I wanted to. All these platforms are fantastic. Would we all agree that we all love all these platforms? We love it. But the biggest thing with any of these and whatever you're doing with a podcast is consistency. It has to stay consistent. Anything you do, it has to stay consistent. Mine is every Friday morning at 7:30. It's there. It lives and breathes there every Friday morning at 7:30. It's like clockwork. In 5 years, in almost 5 years, I would say I've probably missed a handful of Friday mornings. Honestly, it's just been every Friday morning at 7:30 is that I just know that it's there, and I get agents sometimes too that are like 7:30, great. You can go back and watch it again on YouTube. Just like this, right? We can go back and watch this whenever. But again, if I don't stay consistent with it, you can pick out whatever day and time you want to do it. If you want to pre-record it and then push it out, do that. If you don't want to do video and you just want to do the podcast, do that. It still has to live in Buzzsprout. If you want to do both, if you want to live stream it, look, we all know live stream gets a lot of attention. Now, some people just don't want all that attention, which is okay. Me, I enjoy all the attention. But I would say it's the consistency part is the most important part of putting on a show. And it's, again, people will start to watch. If you do it live, the first time you do it live, you might get, 1 or 2 people to watch. The more you do it, the more people will join. Now, years ago, COVID, like during COVID, we were at home. So I did real estate and drinks. It was every Wednesday evening at 7 p.m. I would just go Facebook Live and do real estate and drinks. And I would have a different bourbon or whiskey and hop on. And I would answer real estate questions or whiskey questions or real estate questions while drinking whiskey. Anyway, but you see where I'm getting to. It goes back to the consistency part. When I first started it, nobody watched. My mom would hop in. The more I did it, the more people started to build up and start to watch it. So I'm going to say the same thing when you look at any podcast that you're trying to start. It goes back to the consistency and just doing it on a regular basis. All right? Just doing it on a regular basis. Now, when we talk about going into, advertising or whatever, anything else, make it real simple, right? Make it super simple, right? Mine's the Elite Real Estate Podcast. It's available all these places and go from there. So I just say, again, consistency, keep it super simple. Don't overthink it. Put your Nikes on and just do it. I love it. I mean, I love it. Again, every Friday morning at 7:30, I'm here doing this show. Like I said, get a variety with it. If you're doing it interview style, get a variety with it. Like I have my doctor coming on this Friday. We're going to be talking about some health and men's health. One of the things that, again, it sparked a lot of interest that I've put it out there, that the health and men's health is something we don't talk about. So now all of a sudden it's the thing we're going to talk about on Friday. The other piece is when I go back to these places. So I use another system, and you can write this down because it's not in there. It's not in your handout, but it's another system that I use. It's Talk Studios by Streamlabs. So again, it's Talk Studios by Streamlabs. And that's where my live stream comes from. Okay? And my live stream, kind of similar to Buzzsprout. Talk Studios, it pushes it out to all of these channels at one time. So my live stream goes on all these places every Friday morning at 7:30. Plus, inside of Facebook, it goes to 3 pages. Inside of Instagram, it goes to 2. LinkedIn, it has 1. But so you can see I have 3 pages that every Friday morning get my live stream because it connects. So it's Talk Studios by Streamlabs. And I can't see the questions in there yet, but I'm going to come back if there's questions in there and answer all your questions before we're done. So, but again, so Talk Studios by Streamlabs. There's StreamYard that I used in the past. I used StreamYard in the past. So there's a couple different ones, but Talk Studios, again, simplicity is genius for me. The easier it gets. Like I told you guys at the beginning, I'm 51. So technology, I'm not technology challenged, but I'm not quite a nerd. So I haven't quite nerded out with everything yet, but that's where that is. So again, that has to be there. But again, come up with what it's going to look like for you. And again, though, think about your branding. And when you're thinking about your branding, don't overthink your branding. Get it out first. One thing I learned a long time ago is you make your brand. The brand doesn't make you. Right? So one thing I've learned is making it simple. The Elite Real Estate Podcast. The Elite, my team is the Elite team. Everything is Elite. So I make it simple. Everything has been branded Elite. Those are simple graphics that I put up on Canva. And this now cover lives on all my podcasts. So you get to, going back to Buzzsprout, I upload this artwork into Buzzsprout. And every time somebody sees this, they can download the podcast, go from there. Also on iTunes and Spotify and Stitcher and all the places that it goes to. This is the artwork that everybody sees. I can change that and update it whenever I want to. But again, Canva, and again, all these things that we have already. So don't overthink it, underthink it, and just start it. That's my advice for all this podcast stuff, is just start it before we start overthinking anything. Start it. Start it. Don't keep thinking about it. If you've been thinking about it for a while, just start it. I've talked to so many people that are like, oh, I would love to do a podcast. I would love to do a podcast. I'm like, do it. Like, here's what you do. Here's what you need. Here's what you have to do to start. Here's all the stuff. Well, then nobody starts it. So my biggest advice would be to start it and get it out and start making content. Because again, attention is the asset. The more content I can get, the better off I'm going to be. And the other system that I use is Opus Clips. And you guys may or may not know about Opus Clips, but I use Opus Clips I can take that 1 hour episode, drop it in. It gives me 10 reels in about 10 minutes. And those reels can, again, if you followed me on social media, on Instagram, it's Jimmy Nelson Real Estate. Facebook, it's Jimmy Nelson. In LinkedIn, it's Jimmy Nelson. So if you can find me on all the social medias, the Elite Real Estate Podcast lives in Facebook world as well. On YouTube, it's the Elite Network. So again, because I put other content there, so the Elite Network is where everything resides for me on YouTube, and that's where everything's at. And that's, again, you can see the Elite Network is where everything resides. So we have the podcast, the Elite Real Estate, all the things we have living in those areas. So I just, again, keep it simple. But my biggest advice to everybody is just get started. Just get started. Just get started doing it. What questions does everybody have? I went pretty quick, so I want to make sure I answer any questions anybody's got.
I don't have any questions, but I was going to ask you, like, when you first started, obviously, like, consistency is key, right? Like, you didn't have people just coming on all the time. It was harder to get people to join the podcast. Like, do you see now, like, that you have a lot more people that listen every week, and it's a lot easier to get people to join you or come on as a guest?
Yeah, it's a great question. It does. It takes some time. Like, and don't get discouraged the first time you do it and put it out and nobody watches it, right? Like nobody downloads it. I still look at some episodes and I'm like, some of my episodes get downloaded, 4 times. I'm like, well, that was a good episode, but just how did nobody it just much like social media, right? But again, yeah, you're right, Brooke. Don't get discouraged at first because nobody's listening, right? Because again, then where's the value add? Why would they listen to you? And have you shown them enough value that they would want to listen to you? And again, yes, I would say very slow to start, but then it just starts to pick up. And then all of a sudden you're, on Alexa, and you can say, Alexa, play the Elite Real Estate Podcast, and it comes on, right? I don't know if I'm there yet with that, but it's close. So again, it goes on downloads and all the other things. But yeah, it is tough at first, and it can be discouraging. But it's just like if you did when I first started doing the live event, same thing. I had, like I said, my mom watched, right? My mom's on my show every Friday morning. My mom tunes in and she'll say good morning, and she watches the show if she's up at 7:30 on Fridays. But yeah. So again, you'll gain viewers, you'll gain people. It just it can take a minute for it to keep working. But again, that's where it comes back to the consistency. People start to see it and they're like, oh shit, Brooke's got her thing today. I'm going to go watch it, or I'm going to listen to it.
Yeah, I think too, in general, like, even if no one's watching, like, you're known as the podcast guy now, Like
Yeah.
when people, like, everyone knows you have a podcast, and it's kind of like Nicole, like everybody knows Nicole, like, oh, she's on social media. Like she always did all the reels and everything, right? Like, so even if it's not a huge audience, you're still building a brand,
That's it. And recently, in the past, 3-4 months, I had to go through a complete rebrand from where I was to where I'm at, right? So I had to go through a complete rebrand. But one thing I didn't do was stop every Friday at 7:30. Every Friday at 7:30 continued, I just had to rebrand everything, and it's okay. You can go through a rebrand. The great part about it is you can go through a rebrand anytime you want. You just have to stay consistent with the timing and when you're putting things out. Again, it's just like social media. I can go put a post out today. I can't expect to get somebody to pay attention to it. Now, if I put it out every day, somebody will start paying attention to my posts, much just like podcasting. But yeah, you're right. Once you start building a brand of what it is. Now it's funny. I have people like, I'm booked now through, I think I've only got a couple spots open in February, where I'm booked with guests. And so now I've got people, like you said, approaching me going, hey, can I get on the podcast? I'm like, well, can you end of February? I've had now people reach out to me that I don't even know that are hitting me up through social media and just shoot me emails like, I have this person, so-and-so, that wants to come on your show. And I'm like, okay. I have to go look them up to figure out even who the heck they are. So it's kind of cool that you get to that spot. But doing the items that I put in that will speed that up for you though, right? A lot of everything I put in there, I didn't know that stuff at the beginning. I didn't know about the platforms and who has to host it and then how to push it out. I had to learn all that stuff and I didn't go to any, I just learned it. So I just get punched in the face a bunch of times and figured that I had to duck. So if I can help you guys not get punched in the face, that's what I'm trying to do.
Jimmy, how do you come up with your like content ideas? Do you just go off of like if somebody has a specialty that you kind of talk to that, or do you have like a set of questions that you ask everybody? Like to be honest, I've never listened to your podcast. I know you do it. I didn't know that it's 7:30 every Friday, but curious just how you come up with your content.
Yeah, it's a great question. So a lot of times I just go, because we live in this real estate world, right? Of there's market shifts and the interest rates, and we're getting to closing dates and all the things that come up with inside of real estate. It kind of gives me topics all the time. I'm still active in real estate, right? I'm a transactional agent, right? I'm still doing deals. So I have stuff to talk about. I could do a show by myself just with the crap that goes on with my deals, right? Now, obviously, I don't mention names or anything like that. But so that's one way to come up with content, is just what you're living in this real estate life, this crazy real estate life. What is that like, right? That's interesting to people. That's what HGTV has done to our industry. It made it super interesting, and people want to know more about it. So that's one way to get content. The second way is, what my guests are, right? So last week, I had Ken Hirschman on with EXP. He's out of Royal Oak. He's the #1 team in the state of Michigan right now. And so his is Best Life and Company. Well, I wanted to know why is it Best Life? Like, how did Best Life come about? Where did that come from for you? And, and then he went into the fact of like, well, he wanted his agents that are joining him to live their best life. And so that's where the name came from. So we went into like how he even came up with his name for his team, his location, all that stuff. So that became super interesting. And he loved talking about it because it's like an attraction piece for him too, right? So again, that content piece is the second piece. Is like I come up with whoever I'm having on, I'm going to talk about that, right? Like my doctor coming on this Friday, we're going to talk about men's health because he's helped me out so much, right? And helped me, I'm down 10 pounds from where I was, all these things that we don't talk about. And so we're going to talk about those things on Friday. And I got to get a little vulnerable, right? So not everybody's ready for that, but I got to get a little vulnerable to talk about what I'm going to talk about on Friday. But again, that's where that content comes from. And then hopefully that content, turns out that people want to listen.
That's kind of how we do things too. Like with our mastermind here, it's like, everyone is a little bit different, and if it's just Nikki and I have talked about doing a podcast for years. We bought a bunch of stuff. We never did it, but we also have this. So we could literally put this into a podcast instead of what we're doing.
100%. Because you could do this and interview people and talk about what they want to talk about and then make that your podcast, your Modern Agent Blueprint podcast.
Yep. And I wanted to touch on something really quick because a lot of your theme today was like consistency, right? And it's better to be, to have something done than have it perfect. Just do it. It doesn't have to be perfect every time. And I feel like a lot of people get caught up in that. And I think in real estate in general, consistency is key. Social media, consistency is key. in your business, your personal life, your exercise routine, whatever. Everything is about consistency. So if you're doing it once or twice here and there, you're never going to get the results that you want. So, making sure that you are finding a time. I know, like, Mike Sherrard posts, or he does all of his recording every Saturday, whole Saturdays, his recordings, that he does. And it's, I think, finding the time and making it a priority and not booking over that time with an appointment. Like, this is your time. This is in your calendar as a non-negotiable, and making sure that you're doing it when you're supposed to, staying consistent.
Yeah, it's huge. And like I said, there's another agent I know. He's very popular here in the area, and he does a podcast. But what he does it on that same thing as Mike. He takes 4 hours on a Saturday once a month and puts 4 episodes together. So he doesn't want to eat up that time during the week. He'll take a Saturday, book 4 hours. And he doesn't even own any equipment. He goes to a place where they rent the equipment. So he just goes and rents the space for 4 hours, shoots 4 episodes, records 4 episodes, and then drops them once a week. So he just does it all in one day.
But see, I feel like with that, and maybe you can tell me I'm wrong if you think so, I feel like you're going to lose steam. You're not going to be as excited by podcast number 3 or 4 as you are with podcast 1. So I personally think it's better to do it once a week than to try to knock out 4 in a row when I just feel like you're going to lose steam. You're going to be bored with it, or you're going to, like, your voice is going to be hoarse. You're going to be tired. You want lunch, whatever it might be.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So that's why, to me, it's like the once a week I can commit to I basically chalk up 2 hours, right? To an hour show, but the pre-work, the post-work, I book, a couple hours every Friday. But if I just get that done every Friday, my content's good for the week. I can, everything gets uploaded, and I don't have to worry about anything, right? So that, to me, that saves more time, because, and on top of that, you're correct. I feel more energetic if I just do this in an hour. And now now I have this more organic conversation, as opposed to, like, all right, next, right? Next. And then I do another, I do 4 in a row. It makes it harder.
Yeah. And I feel like you just have to find your flow, what works best. Clearly some people find that works best for them. And I think, with, like our modern agent blueprint, there's a blueprint for success, but you have to figure out what's going to work for you. Even that, like, as a realtor, you have to figure out what works for you. Are you a cold caller? Are you a door knocker? Are you a social media person? Or, like, how are you going to do your business? It's the same thing of coming up with your plan for podcasting or masterminds like this, or whatever it may be. You're just trying to figure out what's going to work best for you, what's going to resonate with your ideal audience, in order to get those people, those viewers, those clients who are going to listen to you and be like, oh, you're doing it all, look at you. So yeah. I think it's important to stay consistent with it and find what works best for you and your business.
Yeah. And I would say this, on top of that, don't try to do too many things, because we get distracted as realtors doing that. You're like, I'm going to do this, 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 right? And now we're doing 17 different things. But streamline it, right? Like, this is part of my social media plan, right? My podcast is part of what I've set goals for my social media and things I want to do with that, how many people I want to add and all that. That's part of my plan with my podcast. So you can marry those two things together too. But yeah, you're right. It's staying consistent and just rinse and repeat. And you're right. It's about your business. But, I coach agents all over the country. And when agents come to me, that's the first thing I talk about. Is like, what's your schedule look like? What's your calendar look like? Break it down for me, and let's figure out what this makes sense. It's 12:50 on Tuesday. What should I be doing as an agent? That's one of the first questions I ask. So when I sit down to do a coaching consultation, that's what I do with agents to start out with.
I think that's actually, like, a clever story idea. Like, it's 12:30 p.m. on or 1 o'clock on a Tuesday. As a realtor, what should I be doing? And, like, put it out there of, like, you could make that a poll. You could do. You're making my mind work here, Jimmy.
That's what I try to do. I try to make it my work. But it's true. Like, think about it. As an agent, like, when we first get into this business, we're like, I'm an agent now. I don't know what to do, right? I showed up at this brokerage. They handed me a phone. They gave me some scripts. Well, I don't know. Like, what else should I be doing? Is that all I have to do all day? You know, so again, but it is true that you guys, I don't know, everybody's old enough to like me, but when I was a kid, there used to be a commercial on TV and it came on at 10 o'clock and it said, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your kids are? Literally, they had to put a reminder on at 10 o'clock at night for my parents to remember that they had kids. Like, it was like, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are? Every night at 10 o'clock on TV, every channel, it came on. It said, it's 10 o'clock. Do you know where your children are?
Well, Jimmy, that was before they were in their bedrooms playing Minecraft and Fortnite. So
Yeah, we didn't have any of that. We were doing Minecraft outside.
well, thank you so much, Jimmy. I want to ask, does anybody else have any other questions for Jimmy today?
I'm good.
Brooke, will you share that link one more time for in the chat? Jimmy came up with a great PDF with all the links to all the stuff he uses and all the equipment. And that's the other thing I was going to say, Jimmy, you were talking about that. Like, you don't need to go out and buy the $1,000 board. You don't need to go out and buy the $500 microphones. You know, start small. I think that's the other thing, like with realtors in general, shiny object syndrome. We feel like we have to have the best of the best in order to start. You don't. Like, you don't have to do all that. You can start out slow. You could start out with the $20 microphones from Amazon that connect to your phone. Like, make life easy, make life simple. And then when you start to be consistent with it and you want to invest into it more, when you kind of prove to yourself that this is something you're going to stick with, kind of use it as like a reward system. All right, I've been doing this consistently for 3 months now. I'm going to upgrade to better microphones. Now it's been 6 months or 9 months. Now I'm going to get this. Like, make it kind of like a, you know, part of your yearly plan of, you know, consistency and keeping things, you know, going, and then reward yourself with some of these things instead of going out and feeling like you have to spend $5,000 immediately.
100%. And again, you can leverage this too, right? If you want to get a sponsor, right? A title lender, somebody that wants to help sponsor you, you're going to have to mention them a lot and have them on the show a lot. But if that gets you some equipment, that's a possibility too, right? So, but yeah, you're right. The $20 microphone and your phone, like, again, the camera and everything that everybody has on their phone works, right? And you can record right there. You can upload from there right to Buzzsprout if you want, right? You just start putting that wherever you need to put it, or just doing the video and just putting it on a YouTube channel. Start a YouTube channel and just put your video there. The YouTube channels are free, guys. Start a YouTube channel and it just houses all your videos. And again, whether you're pulling people to that YouTube channel or not, at least you have a place to go grab them again and put them out. So yeah, you're right. You can start off with $20 and start doing this. It doesn't take a lot of money to start it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jimmy. I really appreciate you coming on today. This was great. Thank you for doing the PDF too, so we have all that information. Again, we'll put it all on YouTube. We're going to throw that link into YouTube as well. So if you are watching this later, you have access to everything. Jimmy, can you repeat one more time where people can find you on socials?
Yeah, for sure. So YouTube is the Elite Network on YouTube. The Elite Real Estate Podcast is the podcast. And you can find me on Instagram at Jimmy Nelson Real Estate, and on Facebook and everywhere else at Jimmy Nelson. So I thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it. Anytime I can help and spread some knowledge, you know, I'm always here for it. So I appreciate you guys having me.
All right. Thank you, Jimmy. Thank you, everybody. We will see you
Thanks,
all
Jimmy.
next week.